Hello everybody and welcome back to another episode of Microsoft Flight Simulator, and in this episode I'm going to show you guys an incredibly awesome tool that has just been released that is completely free that will greatly enhance your virtual reality experience. And today we're going to be using the Pimax Crystal as our example on an RTX 4080. Yes, you're not hearing the 4090 for once. So a more consumer video card with a high resolution VR headset and an amazing application that makes the experience a heck of a lot more fun. Stick around. If you are interested in acquiring any of my Overkill's tutorial guides from Microsoft Flight Simulator, or simply interested in supporting the channel, please consider joining us on Patreon. Patreon subscribers level tier 2 and above have access to all of my guides, as well as any future releases that come down the road. Patreon link can be found in the description below. Alright guys, so we are back in the Mooney, just as in our previous video. I'm actually recording these on the same night. And we are using Smooth Flight by Msfs Tracks, I believe is what the title was. I'm in the VR headset now, so now I have to double check myself. But and this application is absolutely amazing. You guys have probably already heard of the Auto FPS tool that came out a few weeks ago as well that took a lot of headlines. This one takes it a step further. And what it does is it removes a lot of the stuttering. I wouldn't say it removes all of it for me, but keep in mind, like I said, I wanted to point something out that my build, though it is still considered to be high-end, is still far closer to the general consumer. I have a AMD Ryzen 9 3900 XT, so a rather older processor, although it is a fast processor, but one of the things that I still get crippled by is limited by main thread, which means limited by the CPU performance. And then I have the RTX 4080. No, I am not rocking a 4090. And so that is another big key that I wanted to point out. This is an experience that is much more closer to the general consumer's reach without buying a $2,000 plus video card. Although I appreciate many of the reviews that come from the 4090 is still out of reach for many people. And so I wanted to do this video and express my deep gratitude to the developer of this application in regard to the use with the Pimax Crystal. So the Pimax Crystal is at native resolution. It's at its 100% normal resolution, guys, which is like 58 something. I can't remember what it is, 58, 40, I don't remember what it is. You have to look it up. But a very high resolution, high fidelity monitor or VR headset. And one of the things that I tend to run now, you guys can see the FPS that's running here from the OpenXR FPS counter, but keep in mind also that I normally run in about the 40s. I do not think that this is entirely accurate. It's usually off by a few frames to what I'm actually getting inside the headset. And also keep in mind that I am recording at the same time. So OBS automatically takes away, you can count on anywhere from 5 to 10 frames depending on where you're at. Now we're over in my hometown of Tucson, which isn't anything like Phoenix or Los Angeles or New York, so it's not particularly demanding. We're in the Mooney just because I was already flying around it, and quite frankly, I love the Mooney. If you guys don't have it, I highly recommend you pick it up. No, it is not the most authentic, high fidelity, study level version of the aircraft, but it's just something that's a lot of fun to fly with this aircraft. Anyway, digress. Back onto the application. You guys can see it there in the top right corner of the screen. It's got a couple of different settings and configurations. And if you guys are watching the screen, you guys can probably see the terrain level of detail changing as well as object level of detail. And that's what it is essentially doing. You set a frame rate threshold, and the application does as quickly as it can and as smooth as it can, which we can also adjust with that smoothness slider, how quickly it changes the scenery. Now, I haven't tweaked the smoothness and things like that to be more fine because I wanted you guys to see what it is doing. I wanted you to actively watch the changes that I am not having to make as the frame rate changes. Now the target that I have set for it, I think, correct me if I'm wrong guys, you guys can see it on the screen, is in the mid to high 30s. I don't normally get much better than that when it comes to the Pimax Crystal, again because of my hardware. The 3900 XT is the biggest unfortunate limiter for me. It's not so much the graphics card for me as it is the CPU. So that is something that I have learned to deal with and come to expect. Hang on one second guys, I gotta sit up a little bit. There we go. But As far as the overall performance in the sim that I am seeing in the headset, things are much more consistent. I am not seeing my frame rate fluctuating like it normally does. And again, as far as the scenery popping in and out that you guys are likely seeing on screen, I do want to stress one more time, I did that on purpose. I wanted you guys to see what it is doing. So as I'm flying around, it is very rapidly, very quickly changing the settings necessary in order to maintain the frame rate that I've desired. And same things will change as we climb up higher. As we climb up higher, that will become a little bit less prominent as it's not near as intense. But as I get closer to things and where I want to be, I can still see the detail that I want. So it's not a game-breaking or immersion-destroying experience. Now this is a very, very powerful tool. This is also, I believe, the first release of the tool. They've got the final tab there on the far right of the application has a sort of wish tos, wants list things that are coming, and gives you the option to be able to go and vote for those things. So if there's something that you want to see in the application, you have the ability to request that. But what I'm, again, really impressed with is it's not necessary that it's going to hit, you can just set it. If I set this thing to 45 frames per second, it's no way in heck it's going to give it to me. My computer, with its current hardware configuration, cannot do 45 frames per second in the Pimax Crystal at its native resolution. It just can't happen. So, with that in mind, you have to also be realistic on what you're looking for. I'm always down in about the 30s when I'm in the Pimax Crystal, but for me, 30 frames per second Microsoft Flight Simulator is actually okay. I don't really have any problems with it. I can look around and things are still nice and smooth. I don't get any stuttering. I don't see any screen tearing. Nothing that's going to make typical VR users sick when it does. So it's still nice and playable. And what this app is really doing for me is the consistency of the frame rate. Very often I do see it jumping around. It's constantly in the mid 30s, low 30s, sometimes high 20s. Gosh forbid, we don't like those days. But what it does do is makes things very consistent. And again, as the scenery popping in and out, again, is very dramatic right now. And again, stressing, I did that on purpose. When I look down, once I'm over what I want to look at, I can see everything that I would normally see. Out there in the distance, things are flat. You can see the scenery's flat, but like, for example, a good thing to do, let's go over here to the boneyard, and you'll see the aircraft pop in. So you'll still get to enjoy the experience, yes, although a little, again, dramatized, if you will, here because of the settings that I have chosen and the lack of smooth option that I have set. It's at its default settings, but I did play around with it a little bit, and I can smooth that out a bit more to where it's not so dramatic. But let's head over to the boneyard. And that way you guys can see the aircraft. And you'll see them popping in and out. So the boneyard's just on the other side of the Air Force Base there. We're almost nose onto it. It's just a really fantastic application and really changes the game for VR. And it's crazy because there's so many of these things that I really hope that, for example, and I don't want to take a credit away from the developers. By the way, the developer of this application does have a donation link on his site. If you guys are able to donate, make sure that you give him, a cup of coffee, whatever you want to call it, help him out a little bit, show some appreciation to the development of this, because this is definitely something worth mentioning. Anyway, I really hope that in future development, things like OpenXR and programs that do what this one is doing are just put natively into the Sims, because that's what they should be doing. The Sim should be able to know what it needs. That just goes to show, unfortunately, the lack of optimization for virtual reality that many of these Sims have. For example, I will give DCS World this. DCS World now has OpenXR embedded in it. It's now part of the software. I don't know how that's going to look now with OpenXR being basically discontinued, or you know what I mean, in a sustained maintenance, if you will. But here we are at the boneyard, guys. You can see the aircraft perfectly fine. Everything looks great. You're not missing out on any of the scenery or sightseeing that Microsoft Flight Simulator has to offer. While, again, if you guys have seen the frame rate, it has stayed just about in the same spot throughout the entire flight. It's been right about 32 to 33 frames per second ever since we left the ground. Which, by the way, I know I was airborne when we started this video, so I am going to bring it in and show you guys also what it can do for your takeoffs and landings. Now, there are other softwares that will actually pause the sim and allow you to change things when you're landing. This one will actually just switch into a landing mode, which I have enabled and saved. Hang on 1 second, guys. I got a cough. All right, let me make sure I'm unmuted. Sometimes I think I'm unmuted. I'm not. Okay. All right, so now let's head back to the airport. Gosh, this is a fast plane. I got to watch that airspeed. What's our fuel use at? We should probably swap that. And probably should have swapped that a while ago. There we go. The other thing I'll tell you guys, if you haven't watched my last video, if you wear glasses, okay, look into VR Wave. I have now a set of prescription lenses that are in these, in the crystal. My eyesight is not terrible by any means without glasses. I'm slightly nearsighted. I just lose a lot of clarity. Things get fuzzy at a distance much sooner than someone who would, say, have 20/20 vision. But all in all, my eyes are not bad, and having the prescription lenses here made a significantly larger difference than I was expecting. So, let's go ahead and start setting us up for landing here. You know what my favorite part about the Mooney is? It has speed brakes. I don't know why I find that so amusing, but I do. Damn it. Sorry, guys. That one snuck up on me. I don't normally get allergies, but I think I've got them. If I didn't know any better, because I don't feel sick. I just have constant congestion and a stupid cough. It's one of those coughs that's just annoying all day long. You're not really hacking anything up. It's just that constant itch in the back of your throat that no matter what you do, it won't go away. Drives me nuts. All right. And look at this. As soon as we put the speed brakes down, she starts speeding up. All right. Let's get that gear down. Add some drag in. And again, monitoring that frame rate. I guarantee it's a little higher than what we're seeing here on the screen. Not crazy, but I guarantee it's higher. I would trust whatever the FPS that is on the smooth flight says. That seems to be right on par. I was testing it with the developer mode with the in-game FPS counter, and it seemed to be pretty accurate. Turned base or turned final way too soon, but that's all right. Full flaps. Such a cool little plane. I love this plane. Easy, darling. Normally, no matter where I am when I land, I absolutely do see a frame rate loss. And it's definitely not as pretty as we're used to seeing. I'll admit that. It's not as gorgeous as we are used to seeing. But it's smooth. And I don't think there's anything bigger of an immersion breaker than the damn stutters and FPS loss. Like you can see right there, the runway is pretty washed out. As we get down closer, things will start to clean up a bit. And again, I have everything set very dramatically. I can't stress that enough. And again, locked in 32 frames per second the entire time. It did not budge. And that's the advantage to this software. Oh, as I said that. Well, we lost one. We lost one, Jim. But normally I lose anywhere from 6 to 7, depending on where I'm landing, guys. So an incredible piece of software with an incredible advantage. The idea behind it, again, I want to stress, is not to necessarily increase your FPS. It is to help stabilize it. And if you can get your FPS stable in Microsoft Flight Simulator, you can fly just about anything. Whoa, that was weird. And remember, right now I have everything at max settings in the Pimax Crystal. So there are other things that I could tweak. I've made basically what I did is I set up the sim so the software would have to work as hard as possible. So I wanted you guys to see the ugliness. I wanted you guys to see how the scenery changes. I wanted you to see the expectation. The last thing that I will tell you guys is about starting it. I did run into some really weird issues when initially launching it. And what I have found, launch Microsoft Flight Simulator, put it into virtual reality, and then launch the smooth flight. I had some goofy issue where if I did smooth flight first or anything out of the order that I said, the headset would just start spinning. Like everything would just spin, flipping around. The aircraft was bouncing up and down, literally to the point where it caused a failure. So something to think about there. So again, launch the sim, go into VR, then launch smooth flight. Anyways, as always, guys, the links to everything will be down in the description below. Let me know what you guys think down below, and if you've tried this out in any particular settings that you have found that are more beneficial than others. And as always, stay safe and healthy. I'll see you in the next one, folks. Bye-bye.